Speaking as a professional, do you think it's possible?
It's possible. The point is getting away with it. Would be much more difficult than most other targets. Why more? Because
Are you going to tell us what they're waiting for in that hotel?
Jack, it is my duty to inform you, Minister, that in my opinion, we face a national emergency.
you've got 2 days to catch.
Nine 11, as we saw, was an event that changed America and changed the world. And we saw with this there was a cover-up, a new direction in America, in its policies, and how it would act towards its own citizens and towards the world. And so as we go on here into this further, we will make sure, first of all, that we understand that the idea of a new world order is real. So we're going to have some statements just now, just to put that back into your mind, because, you know, conspiracy theory is said so many times. It's almost that the conspiracy is meant to be something that's not real. Conspiracy means something done in secret that is real. And this is what is happening here. We want to focus also on predictions, and the predictions is in 13, Revelation 13. I want to go over that quickly just now because I want to keep on emphasizing those points concerning biblical prophecy, was telling us who is behind the scenes, who is pulling the strings. And then we're going to put these clips in so you can enforce in your mind that it's real. And we're going to go further and further into who is behind the scenes. Now, as we saw in Revelation 13 verse 1, I saw, as I looked upon the sand of the seas representing nations, kindred, tongues, people, I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns upon its horns. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and its feet like unto the feet of a bear, and its mouth like unto a lion. And the dragon we're told in Revelation 12 represents Satan, gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. And I saw, as it were, one of its heads wounded to death, and the deadly wound was healed. So we have this amalgamated beast. It was made up of all those things that went before it, the world empires. That was Babylon, Medo, Persia, Greece, and then Rome, and then the Roman Church, which ruled with great power over the worlds by legislative authority given to it by Justinian to persecute heretics, and this ended by legislative power of Napoleon by Bill 8 in 1798, as the prediction was given. A time prediction was given, 1260 years. And here in this verse it talks about the deadly wound was healed. So a wound was given it, power, estate was taken away. But then Mussolini, for his own power, he gave back to the papacy money, estate. And so with this rise also there was the rise of the Jesuits. It also was given a deadly wound in that its organisation was taken away at the petition or the insistence of many Catholic countries. So first of all, when it started when causing war between Portugal and Spain, and various ideas and excuses are given for this, but these were the guys in charge of the Inquisition. These were the ones with a lot of wealth and power. They worked with the very rich and the very poor. So we can see today this is exactly how the new Pope presents himself, a man of the people. Grassroots. Get the grassroots on side and give yourself the power. Liberation theology, that's what it's all about. And then with this beast rising up, we're also told of another beast which has horns of a lamb, but it speaks as a dragon, and it comes up out of the earth, meaning a power coming up out of the new world. And this is we speak of is of the USA. So we have these two powers, and they have there's a common denominator between them, particularly as we come into America post Second World War. Common denominator, and in South America we can see their activity, where you have problems with communist countries, and you have the CIA and the Jesuits working together. And a perfect example of this is with manual art time in Cuba, and also the representation of the Pope with Castro today. So we'll have a look at this first clip, and this is Howard Hunt. We'd spoken of him earlier before. Guatemala was an example of the collaboration that was between the Church of Rome and American CIA. And here's just a little clip. You can, if you have one of the other videos, you can go back to that as well and just get a more full insight into the background of the situation that went down there.
At CIA headquarters in the summer of 1953, Alan Dulles, the agency's director, recruits E. Howard Hunt as his propaganda chief in the plot to oust Arbenz.
And they took me into a small room in the agency and swore me a special oath. I must never tell what they were going to tell me. I wouldn't presume to trace the lines of authority within the Catholic Church, how they get their information, but they do. And we've always said, you know, in an admiring way, that the Jesuits formed the greatest intelligence service in the world.
Now, this idea of the New World Order just didn't come out of anywhere. It came out of the ideas of the old order. The old order, as I mentioned, was a legislative power that was given to the Vatican over the 1260 years in which to persecute heretics. That was given by Justinian, and it was finished by Napoleon. And then it had a deadly wound, and the deadly wound was healed. So this is the old world. But in this end time scenario, where Daniel had told us, many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased, and it's exponential. This is the time which was prophesied by Daniel. This will be the time of Christ's return and the resurrection of the dead. So in this time we have the old world power, but with new world technology. And that is made available because something which Hitler was not able to do successfully, but his speeches envisaged that Christians, Protestants and Catholics unite against anything which is anti-Christian. You see, this came from Jesuit ideology. And so it is in the United States. To get into the top position, you must go through a Jesuit university. So behind the Protestant power is the ideology that has set it on the course. And now it's talking about freedoms and liberties, as if it's securing that which it was founded on, but it is not. It is totally opposite.
We have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order, a world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations. When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
Now, Bush Sr. tells us we have a real chance at this new world order. But hands up, who wants to be part of that new world order? You see, as we're looking at things at this point in time, the news items, what's happening all around us, people are scared. They don't like what they see in the future, and they can see the whole world volatile. So it's, as often is the case, we have a situation where people go into war and then they blow the enemy apart, and then they come in as the humanitarian. Papacy has done this, and also the Americans have done this. So as time goes on, there's more and more correlation between the two. And what we're told here is that this lamb-like beast makes an image to the beast whose deadly wound was healed, the first one meaning the Vatican. So America will take on that Christian persecuting role, and we're in the middle of seeing this turn around. And there's a catalyst here. Before, in the past, it was communism. At this present time, it's the power of the Muslims. So you have these powers from the bottomless pit. So simply put, in Revelation, 3 come up from the bottomless pit, and they're waging war against each other. And you can see this happening here now. And this is brought out also in Malachi Martin's book, Jesuit priest, Jesuit insider from the Vatican. Now he's dead. It's said that he died under mysterious circumstances. What it said, it was a 3-way war in which the papacy would be the victor, and the contest was between 2 others. And it alluded to the United States of America or to Russia coming out. And of course, there is this closer collaboration that has been going on for some time, which is between the US and the Vatican.
What is at stake is more than one small country. It is a big idea, a new world order, where diverse nations are drawn together in common cause to achieve the universal aspirations of mankind: peace and security, freedom, and the rule of law. Such is a world worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future.
So, the rule of law, worthy of our struggle and worthy of our children's future. That's what George Bush Sr. had to say. What rule of law is that? Is it that which America was founded on? If it was the rule of law given in the Bible, but that's not what permeates their science. It's evolutionary ideas. The Big Bang Theory, which suits evolution, is a Jesuit idea, of course. The rule of law would give to the world the peace and prosperity that it desires. But at this time, Pope Francis is talking about creation, or respecting that which the Creator has created, yet it is not respecting the commandments of God. It does not respect, remember to keep the Sabbath day holy. 6 days shalt thou labour and do all thy work, but the 7th day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, etc. In Revelation, again, it re-emphasises this. It says, I saw another angel flying in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel. to preach to them that dwell upon the earth, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth, the sea and the fountains and waters. So here it's emphasized again. But this is not the rule of law. You see, if one law is broken, all of them are broken. And the foundation of the United States, more than democracy, it's in God we trust. So here we have a problem. And does the end justify the means? So we get through and we go through with bombs and we make our way through the Middle East to make our rule of law. But the rule of law is through conflict. And it's not through the authority of God. And God said in Revelation 13, speaking of this lamb-like, Protestant-like country, predicted since the 1880s. Why do I say that? It's part of the history of Seventh-day Adventism, predicting that USA would join hands with Romanism and become a persecuting power, forming an image to the beast. Now the rule of law worthy for the children is that which truly separation of church and state, which the pilgrims came on their boat, the Mayflower, and fled away from the old world. But the old world, being undone, saw the prosperity in the new world and sought to bring the countries of the West, the new world, down in their prosperity to suit their own purposes. This is what has happened in the USA and its influence then on the other countries round about.
And for the international order that we have worked for generations to build. Ordinary men and women are too small-minded to govern their own affairs. That order and progress can only come when individuals surrender their rights to an all-powerful sovereign.
The international order which we have worked for generations to build. We can peel back the pages a long way on this and look at its Masonic foundations and Jesuit influence in Masonic foundations. We can look at the work of Romanism and particularly the Jesuits for ultimate power, and they are there seated in that power position at the moment. Now, if Obama had started with such a speech right at the beginning, how would that have gone down in his election? But here we have it at the later point, and he talks openly and saying that ordinary people are too small-minded to look after their own affairs. God doesn't think so. He says, worship him that made heaven and earth, sea and fountains of waters. And he says, keep my commandments. And if you keep my commandments, I will love you, my Father will love you, and we will make our abode with you. And again, if you love me, I will send you another comforter, even the Spirit of truth. So here we have it that God, when we give ourselves truly to God, that he makes individuals worthy to look after their own matters, and this is true liberty, in which there are law-abiding peoples, founded on the true word of God. And what is the false word? The false word is that a theology that is there present, which says, well, the New Testament negates those things which are before. It supersedes it. Instead of adding to it as Christ did, he expanded the idea of the commandments. Instead, we come to people who twist the words of Paul to their own destruction and say that was done away with. That is of no importance now. So we have this false theology when Jesus has plainly said over and over again in the Revelation, blessed are they that do my commandments, that they may have a right to eternal life, to the gates of the city to pass therein. And so this is put through Revelation again and again, clearly given who has a right, those who are commandment-keeping peoples. So then, the only thing that God wrote with and spoke with and is written in His Word, that is what we need to pay attention to, the Ten Commandments, given for our salvation. Now the rest of the Bible is how we, as rebels, naturally in mind and deed against those Ten Commandments, can become a commandment-keeping people.
Some hard-nosed people took over the direction of American policy, and they never bothered to inform the rest of us. I went through the Pentagon 10 days after 9/11. I couldn't stay away from Mother Army. And an officer from the Joint Staff called me into his office and said, I want you to know, he said, "Sir, we're going to attack Iraq." And I said, "Why?" He said, "We don't know." He said, I said, "Well, did they tie Saddam to 9/11? He said, "No." And then I came back to the Pentagon about 6 weeks later. I saw the same officer. I said, why haven't we attacked Iraq? We still going to attack Iraq?" He said, "Oh, sir," he says, "it's worse than that." He said, he pulled up a piece of paper off his desk. He said, "I just got this memo from the Secretary of Defense's office. It says we're going to attack and destroy the governments in 7 countries in 5 years. We're going to start with Iraq, and then we're going to move to Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and Iran." I said 7 countries in 5 years.
It's very interesting that this speech here by George Bush Sr., the Skull and Bones man, CIA man, is given on 9/11, and we heard it previously where he spoke of a new world order. We heard his very words, an era in which the nations of the world, east and west, north and south, can prosper and live in harmony. But to get there, they have to do it by warfare. Spread democracy by war. This is not really a new idea. Bush said concerning Desert Storm, a war to end all wars. And we have here a CIA, not a Malta-led organisation, refusing to expose the activities of 9/11 even after Senate inquiry. They have such a strong control, and there is such a scheme going there at the top that they don't want exposed. So often we're mentioning the Jesuits. They are the strongest organisation post-Second World War leading out. But also there is the Franciscans, the Dominican. It was Thomas Aquinas who the Jesuits followed, and he in turn he outlined Christian warfare, I must say that. So Thomas Aquinas, justification for Christian warfare, detailed, outlined that justification, and then we have him following this idea of Christian warfare, which was first given by Augustine. And so we have the first dual hegemony in the world, and that is Vatican US, and it's been put in place by stealth. In the background we have the Vatican working. It will remain the player throughout history to the very end of time, and at the forefront is the US until it's spent. Moderator in war, that is the Vatican, while the clergy organise and participate in war, and they don't say, well, stop the war. The idea is to exhaust both sides and come in as the peacemaker. That's what Ignatius Loyola had pointed out in his organisation as the leader for the Jesuits. War for Peace in Australia, a Jesuit-led one, very much, first one in the Western world. And then we have Peace for Total World Surveillance, dominance with loss of liberty. What a world. This is not the one which Jesus truly envisaged. Augustine theology fed to the US military. Now that's not made up, it's for real. with the Jesuit order influencing the civil arm of the US military action. The purpose of all war is peace, says Augustine and the papacy, but we'd have to ask at what cost? Loss of liberty of conscience. It's of interest that 9/11 corresponds with American operations in Chile. Richard Nixon, then President of the United States, received a personal call from Donald Kendall, Chairman of PepsiCo. Notice it's only a drink company. This has not been difficult to set up, given that Richard Nixon had formerly served the company as its corporate attorney. Kendall arranged for the owner of the company's Chilean bottling operation to meet National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger on September 15, 1970. Another person who they would have liked to have got on war crimes would be Henry Kissinger. Hours later, Nixon called in his CIA chief, Richard Helms, and according to Helms' handwritten notes, ordered the CIA to prevent Allende's inauguration as president in Chile. On September 11, 1973, Allende committed suicide during a military coup launched by Army Commander-in-Chief Pinochet, who became president. 10 million was given to overthrow the government. That's a lot of money at that point in time. A document released by the CIA in 2000 titled CIA Activities in Chile revealed that the CIA actively supported the military junta after the overthrow of Allende, and that it made many of Pinochet's officers into paid contacts of the CIA or US military. These were criminals. Even though many were known to be involved in notorious human rights abuses, until Democratic challenger Jimmy Carter defeated President Gerald Ford in '76, so things started to change apparently. The possibility of Allende winning Chile's 1970 election was deemed a disaster by the US government, who wanted to protect US business interests and prevent any spread of communism during the Cold War. In September 1970, President Nixon informed the CIA that Allende government in Chile would not be acceptable and authorized 10 million to stop Allende from coming to power or to unseat him. The opposition in Chile, who was it by? Well, there were a few involved, but it was to their advantage both the USA and the Catholic Church. Opposition by landowners, some middle-class sectors, the Rightist National Party, financiers, and the Roman Catholic Church, which in '73 was displeased with the direction of the educational policy. It's interesting because educational policy is pinnacle to their success, and that is what is overtaking the Western world. The money is given primarily to the private sector, and the biggest one in that sector in education is the Catholic Church. He shut down Parliament, this is Pinochet, suffocated political life, banned trade unions, and made Chile his sultanate. His government disappeared 3,000 opponents, arrested 30,000, torturing thousands of them, and Pinochet's name will be forever linked to the caravan of death, and he institutionalized torture. Not a very good man at all. Pinochet, a papal puppet. Another reason of Pinochet's decision to call for elections was the April '87 visit of Pope John Paul II to Chile. According to US Catholic author George Weigel, he held a meeting with Pinochet during which they discussed a return to democracy. This is a little bit the same as what you might say was going on down in Chile, not Chile, into Cuba. John Paul II allegedly pushed Pinochet to accept a democratic opening of the regime and even called for his resignation. He'd served his purpose. The world is a theatre. The actors its inhabitants. We see, just looked at a few actors. They are preparing to act their part in the last great drama. With the great masses of mankind there is no unity, except as man confederate to accomplish their selfish purposes. They both have self-interests. America, USA, that's why they're in that top global position. When the USA is expanded according to prophecy, then the Vatican will play its role with another. God is looking on. His purposes in regard to his rebellious subjects will be fulfilled. The world has not been given into the hands of men, though God is permitting the elements of confusion and disorder to bear sway for a season. Man is having his way, and Satan his way for a while. A power from beneath is working to bring about the last great scenes of the drama. Satan working with all deceivableness of unrighteousness in those who are binding themselves together in secret societies. Those who are yielding to the passion for confederation, notice this, are working out the plans of the enemy, and this was written a long time ago. We're talking about, say, 1890. Talking about confederation, because it was prophesied. Never did this message apply with greater force than it applies today. More and more the world is setting at naught the claims of God. Men have become bold in transgression. The wickedness of the inhabitants of the world has almost reached up the measure of their iniquity. This earth has almost reached the place where God will permit the destroyer to work his will upon it. The substitution of the laws of men. What laws? Those laws which the papacy primarily has put in place and which we recognise worldwide for the law of God. So substitute man's law for God's law. The exaltation by merely human authority of Sunday in place of the Bible Sabbath is the last act in the drama. When this substitution becomes universal, God will reveal himself. He will arise in his majesty to shake terribly the earth. There's a pretense that we follow God and that we're putting things in place while we're doing the very opposite. He will come out of his place to punish the inhabitants of the world for their iniquity, and the earth shall disclose her blood and shall no more cover her slain. That's a picture from the war in Libya. It's always the grassroots people who are affected by such things. I wonder what they're looking up to. I'd say the New World Order.
Snowden identified himself as a principal source behind revelations about the National Security Agency's sweeping phone and internet surveillance programs.
Welcome to the post-9/11 world. Mega data information collection. And the collection is on the citizens of the world. Before 9/11, William Benny found himself working on security for the USA in a program called Stellar Wind, and this was to be used against the Russians. After 9/11, this program was quickly turned onto the US citizens after the attacks, and this was all under George W. Bush. Just looking at the information here, was revealed by Thomas Taine apparently in the New York Times in 2008. It was a prelude to new legal structures that allow Bush and then President Obama to reproduce each of those programs and expand their reach. Programs' activities included data mining of large database of the communications of American citizens, including email communications, telephone conversations, financial transactions, and internet activity. And so they've continued to expand, and countries of the West are following, with the opposition of the people in each of those countries of the West following the United States. Government is mapping out your entire life, says Benny's, over time to monitor what you are doing. Before the September 11 terror attacks, The piece of paper known as the US Constitution provided protection for every American from this invasion of privacy. However, a decision point changed this when the President George Bush, Dick Cheney, CIA Director George Tenet, and NSA Chief Michael Hayden conspired to violate these rights, and that they did. This is not spreading democracy and freedom, as they would like to say. Metadata intelligence gathering was primarily on the citizens of America who were targeted and then spread to the West. Remember what Ralph McGee's words were. He was a former CIA agent, and we spoke of him earlier. American people are the target audience of its lies, because they need to have the majority on their side for them to act in any way. Who was in charge? CIA, NSA, with directions to the foreign policy advisors for the president. CIA, before George Bush Jr. presidency, had been stripped of their arms. Now he re-empowers them. And this was in Time magazine. We've shown that picture, you've seen it many times, of the spy going down on the rope, and it tells you how the powers of the CIA were extended under Bush with the war in Iraq. You shall not be able to buy and sell except you have the mark of the beast. This is a verse from Revelation 13. And I've given you here again the words, some very important words here from Snowden. We are building the biggest weapon for oppression in the history of man. Hear what he's saying. The surveillance we live under is the highest privilege compared to how we treat the rest of the world. That says something. Drones extended under the Obama in different countries of the world and used to follow an individual in their house for hours. Link back to the NSA, they can have that thing buzzing around you at a distance and taking all your information and following your life. The persecutions of Protestants by Romanism, by which the religion of Jesus Christ was almost annihilated, will be more than rivaled when Protestantism and Popery are combined. This is what Hitler tried to do. This is what has been predicted will happen in the very near future, and this system is put into place. Satan has 1,000 masked batteries which will be opened upon the law commandment keeping people of God to compel them to violate conscience, written in 1892. Notice the date. We need not be surprised at anything that may take place now. We need not marvel at any development of horror. Those who trample under their unholy feet the law of God have the same spirit as had the men who insulted and betrayed Jesus. Without any compulsion of conscience, they will do the deeds of their father, the devil. Protestant America has just prepared an image to the beast. It's about in place. That image of the old world was one of a persecuting power where liberty of conscience was stripped. Modern technology for an old world scenario of torture and surveillance. And so you've got the picture here, and that's Snowden underneath a red cape to make sure that they can't see where he's touching the keys, because the system in place is so powerful that they can camera, record, they can virtually do anything to follow up somebody. There's no way out of this situation except for the protection of God Almighty. All radio, digital and analog communications are intercepted. All communication content is available. Contractors and business do the government's business. So the government uses somebody else to take care of their matters, and they're put into private hands, which is totally wrong, immoral, that they should be giving companies the ability to take people's data, personal data. So years ago there was a fellow who worked at Qantas. He had been retired for quite some years, and he was talking about working in Qantas years and years ago, and he said he wouldn't have a computer in the house because they can go up and down the line, which they can. It wasn't built for emails, it was built for warfare, for surveillance. That's what the computer system, internet system is all about. From now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, article you write, site you visit, subject line you type, and packet you route is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited but whose safeguards are not. Notice what he says. Reach is unlimited, safeguards are not. Your victimization by NSA system means that you are well aware of the threat that unrestricted secret abilities pose for democracies. Notice those last words there. You're aware of the threat of unrestricted secret abilities. Secret societies are behind this. Secret abilities pose for democracies. We are on the very verge of the time of trouble, as described by Daniel the prophet in Daniel chapter 12, a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation. But it says, at that time shall Michael stand up, that great prince which standeth for the children of thy people. Then it says there'll be a time of trouble. So Jesus is coming at that time to bring his own, to be with him, that where I am, there you might be also. And perplexities that are scarcely dreamed of are before us. So it says also in Daniel chapter 12, and everyone shall be delivered whose names are written in the book. In whose book? The Lamb's book of life, slain from the foundation of the world. And here we have this group which have been true to Jesus, and they are involved in the messages that are given worldwide. Revelation 14 verse 1, I looked and behold, Lamb stood on Mount Zion, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. The one true God, the Father, and they have the name written in their foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and the voice of the great thunder, and I heard the voice of harpers harping with a loud voice. So here's the Lamb, and we have that other Lamb, a false Messiah, as spoken of in Revelation 13, lamb like horns that causes fire to come down the side of men, and this is the true Lamb. And in chapter 14 further we have the everlasting gospel to preach to them that dwell upon the earth, the first angel of the three who gives a message to the world, and the message is specifically concerning worship and the detail of that worship. Worship him that made heaven and earth, the sea and fountains of waters. And it's re-echoing the commandments of God. If you love me, keep my commandments, that you might have a right to the tree of life and to the gates of the city. And so we find all these promises in Revelation. And a third angel followed, second angel followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Here's the message to be given to the world. The true versus the false. We must understand what is truth, and then we can step or go to the understanding what is false. If we can't understand number one, we won't understand number two. So the second angel says, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because it's made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. So when it talks about the angel giving a message, it's through human instrumentalities that the message is given. This is described how this chain of events, I've mentioned it before, is given to us in Revelation 1 verse 1. And a third angel followed, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, or receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, so intellect or by force, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And so a warning is given. The warning is vital. The messages are of great importance because it's about the final conflict. It's about eternity. It's about where you're going to put your weight and influence into the future. Because we have the Word of God here, we can see what is happening right now, but also it lets us peer into the future as to what will happen. The reason why many people do not come to the Word of God or understand it in the revelation is because they refuse to keep the commandments of God. Let us not receive the mark of Cain. Let us not bring a bowl of fruit to worship God with when he asks for something different. Let us be commandment keeping, love Jesus, and give him all that we've got.